This week has shown us all that there are some things that come that are just beyond our control, and no amount of preparation can get you ready for it. And yet, there are some things that many women are not doing during their pregnancies that are very easy. And in doing so, they are leaving themselves vulnerable in ways that are completely unnecessary. Today's episode is a call to action with a new level of urgency because you just don't ever know. Let's go. Are you a Christian woman yearning for a beautiful, joyful pregnancy and birth with a focus on God, not medical tests? Are you worried the birth you want isn't possible and you're tired of being treated like an accident waiting to happen? Hey mama, I'm Lori, host of Your Birth God's Way. I'm a certified nurse-midwife now, but I wasn't always. After working for nearly 20 years in the broken maternity system, I too was in your shoes wondering how I could have the birth I wanted and that I felt God meant for me to have. I found a secret that has actually been known since the beginning of time. God's way is the best way. Spoiler alert, God made us and our babies, and He knows us best. He designed us perfectly for pregnancy, birth, and nourishing our babies after birth, if we work with His design and not against it. In this podcast, you'll learn how to be healthy and have joy during this time of life that will be over before you know it. So if you're ready to reclaim your birth and your babies for His glory, go turn on a few episodes of Bluey for that little one on your hip so you can put the focus back on you for a few minutes with me. Review time. Today I've got a review from Mount Beck, I believe that's what it would be. It says, thank you. I'm preparing for my VBAC at the end of November and have found this podcast to be so helpful. Lori teaches from a place of trust in our God, in our body, and not out of fear. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with all of us. And thank you so much for taking the time to leave me a review. It helps me so much. And guys, if you have not taken a time to leave me a review yet, just understand it does not cost you a thing, but it helps me so much to find other moms like you who could benefit from this information. The algorithm for the way that these things work and the way that they suggest this podcast and where I come up in the ratings and things like that is all based on your reviews. And so if you could just take the time to do that, it will help me so much. And not to mention, it really, really encourages me to know that I'm helping real mamas out there. Sometimes, you're sitting here, you're recording podcasts, you're talking to a computer screen, and you forget there's people out there listening. And when I hear from you, to know that you are hearing what I'm saying and it's helping you, it helps me so much. So again, if you haven't left me a review yet, please go do that right now. Appreciate it so much. Okay. Last week was a very heavy week. It was a heavy episode. This one's going to be heavy too, for the same reason. I live about 2 hours from the western edge of where all the things that you've been seeing, I hope you've seen some of it. I say I hope just because you need to realize what's really going on in our country right now. Out in eastern Tennessee and western North Carolina, it is unimaginable. The things that have happened there and the things that these people are living through and living with. It has exposed vulnerabilities in our population and in the health of our population in a very, very real way. And so that's what I want to talk about today. This week I've heard of at least 2 women who gave birth in the mountains alone, and rest assured that was not their plan. These things happened, and of course they had no expectation that it would ever be this bad. You live in the mountains of North Carolina. You don't expect a hurricane to come through and destroy your entire world. I've tried to find ways to get there to help, but it's just about impossible to know where the women are who actually need me. And even if I could go there, who knows if they would even let me in. Strange things are happening out there. Not going to go into that. You've probably heard some of them. At any rate, nobody there, or anywhere else for that matter, would have ever imagined that something like this would happen. Roads are washed out. Communities are entirely gone. Homes are left completely cut off in the communities that haven't washed away. There are many thousands of people whose only way in and out to their homes has been washed out, gone. And I'm not just talking about like the road got broken up a little bit in some places. The entire, I guess you would call it infrastructure under the road, the ground under the road, it's gone too. It is unimaginable. In some of these homes where these women still are and have been cut off, there are women who are pregnant and are near giving birth, or maybe already have given birth, and they are closer to their due date than they want to be in light of these circumstances. They've been hoping for this day, and now many of them, I'd say most of them, are terrified of this day. Statistics show us that most women give birth in a hospital, and most of them have some sort of pain intervention, usually some kind of an epidural. Most women plan to go to the hospital even if they do plan a natural birth, either because that's the only choice they see or they just want to. In North Carolina in particular, home birth is very hard to access because of all the restrictive laws on midwives. So most women there are going to have their babies at the hospital. That's what they were planning. But what happens when you can't? Last week, I walked you through the steps to take if you find yourself in that situation. But I didn't address that mindset shift, that we all need to have at this point. We talk often in Bible studies and things like that you aren't promised tomorrow. We don't know when our last day is going to be. But there are things that can happen that completely throw our world off, but stop short of death. Nothing is promised either for us to continue living or for us to continue having these things that we've become accustomed to in this country. Nothing is promised. Storms can come, and they can become something that you didn't know they would be or even that they could be. Electricity isn't promised. Clean running water isn't promised. A way to get medical help isn't promised. Back to the water system, if you didn't realize this, entire water lines are gone. The infrastructure where they used to be is gone. Parts of the water treatment facilities are gone. It will be months, if not years, before some of these places have running water back. Like, this is how far back these people are being put into what we would consider history, because we've had plumbing for so long in most places. So we are in a situation, these families are in situations that they never anticipated. And we don't know when similar things could happen to us who haven't been impacted. And here's the hard truth. Like it or not, there are choices that you can make to reduce your vulnerability if these times should come your way. I've heard so many reports of people in those hills who are cut off from society who need oxygen or insulin, and they can't get it. I know sickness happens. We get sick here and there. You can't always control that. But a large portion of the people needing those types of interventions on a regular basis have reached this point due to life choices over many years. Years of eating unhealthy or smoking or other factors can create a situation where if vital infrastructure fails, you may have trouble staying alive. If babies come when that vital infrastructure fails, then what? So let's get real. Let's talk. No matter what you've thought you wanted for your birth, you better change your perspective and realize that what you may want could be gone in the blink of an eye. There's 3 things I want to talk about today that you can impact, you can change so that you are less vulnerable. First, your health in general. This is the one for everybody listening, not just pregnant women. Hear me when I tell you that what you eat matters. If you are making a diet of processed foods and exposing your body to the toxins that come in all of these products you're putting on your body, over time, those substances are going to impact your health. Your body doesn't know what to do with all this toxic exposure. And eventually, health problems are going to arise. Your body can deal with it for a while. It'll fight with it a while. It'll deal with it for a while, but eventually it's going to catch up with you. Healthy food is food that is as close to the way God created it as possible. And if God didn't create it, meaning if it was made in a factory or in a manufacturing facility, it is not healthy. If it's vegetables, They need to be something eaten as close to harvest as possible, because that's where they're going to have the highest nutrient content. When you get stuff that was harvested on the other side of the country, or worse yet, the other side of the world, the nutrition is much lower and sometimes essentially non-existent. The stuff you get in cans, it's better than nothing, but the nutrition in there is essentially non-existent. If we're talking about meat, it needs to be meat that's been raised in its natural habitat from as close to you as possible, preferably meat from a farmer that you know, so you can see how they're raised and know that they actually have a high nutrient density that's going to make you stronger. If it's milk, it should be raw. It should be from a source that you know and a source that you trust, where the animals are raised, again, in their natural habitat. Because when they're raised in closed-in, unnatural facility settings, their milk is essentially deplete of nutrients. And pasteurization changes that nutrition so significantly that your body doesn't really know what to do with it. You've got to give your body the fuel that God designed it to use. You can't run a diesel vehicle with gas, and you can't run your body on fuel that God didn't design it to have for very long without getting sick. I mentioned also the things you put on your body. You need to be paying attention to the labels on the backs of your deodorants and your shampoos and your conditioners and your lotions and your makeups and all the things you put on your body, because your skin is the largest organ in your body and it absorbs everything. You need to be paying attention, because when you put things on your body and in your body for many years that are toxic, eventually you're going to get sick with chronic illness that could have been prevented, that then when disaster comes and you can't get to the things that you need, your body is going to shut down. When you have eaten processed foods to the point that you are so overweight that you become a type 2 diabetic and maybe even end up dependent on medication or insulin, what are you going to do when you can't get that? All of those years, if you had made better choices, you might have never gotten to that point. Now, I know there are people who struggle hard with this. I am not judging you. I am trying to wake up those of you who want to be awake, who want to do better. If you are hearing this and you're looking in the mirror thinking, I've got to do something, it is not too late to make changes. And now is a great time to do it. Now is the time to give your body energy, efficient fuel that will build you up and make you stronger and not sick, so that you are not vulnerable when things go south. Because you don't know when that might happen. The people in North Carolina had no idea they would be sitting in this place that they're sitting right now. If they survive this, they are looking around them bewildered. And if they are dealing with health situations and health conditions, or they're out of shape, or they can't get up and down a mountain, some people, the way they survived was climbing up the mountain behind their house, because the water got into their house so much that was the only way they survived. Can you do that? Could you do that right now? Could you climb the mountain behind your house if you have one? Could you get out and run if you had to? These things could happen. Think about it. Let's talk about your pregnancy and birth. Beyond the nutrition I just talked about, there is a way that God designed us to give birth and to labor, whether or not we are in a disaster or in everything in a normal, everyday situation. Our world has given us some things that make it seem easier to labor for some people. And some think that's better. But hear me when I tell you, these things are not necessary. While you may want those conveniences, they are not always possible, even in the best of situations, by the way. You might think they will be, but you really don't know. Even if disaster doesn't happen, what happens if you're at the hospital and the lady down the hall called first for her epidural, and there's only one anesthesiologist, and while you're waiting, your baby comes? Will you be scared and out of control and screaming like someone who is just absolutely terrified of what's going on? Or will you be prepared and composed because you took the time to learn coping skills just in case? Even if you do get your epidural, many hospitals won't give it to you until you get to a certain dilation. So you're likely going to have to labor for at least a while naturally. Are you going to be able to manage that? What if your epidural doesn't work? Are you going to be able to manage that? Are you planning a C-section? What happens when the baby comes quickly at home before you had a chance to get in? Or maybe there's an emergency case at the hospital that gets priority before your case because you're not emergent. And while you're waiting, your baby comes. Will you be prepared? You are made to give birth without much of anything. If you don't believe me, go back and listen to the last podcast. I walked you through how you can give birth with almost nothing. Your body has inside of it all the strength and all the wisdom that it needs if you'll just learn to trust it and to trust God. God built into you what you need, but the world has taught you to doubt that. The courses like mine teach you how to tune into what you've been made to do and to drown out the noise that has told you that you need somebody else to help you do what you were designed to do. The world's convinced you that you can't even go into labor without being induced. That's a lie. Your body knows what to do because God made it to do that. And courses like mine teach you how to trust that. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Hang in there with me. The third thing I want to talk about is your baby and the vulnerability of your baby if you make choices to make yourself vulnerable. And I know that stings, but I've heard stories of babies who have been born since the storm to moms who were about to run out of formula when they were finally found. And the moms were terrified they wouldn't be able to feed their baby. Now, I'm baffled by this. If this story is true, because that mom, I'm baffled because that mom had a supply of perfect food for that baby, but she likely hadn't prepared because she'd planned to bottle feed. And maybe she'd been told what she would make wasn't enough or wasn't good enough. Maybe she'd never seen it done and she was scared to try because she didn't know how, or maybe she tried it before and it didn't work, so she wasn't prepared this time. I don't know the circumstances and I'm not judging them, but what I am saying is this. This could be a life and death situation that can be prevented if you will take the time to prepare yourself to use the system that God built into you to keep your baby alive. All this worldly doubt has been placed into a system that God made to work perfectly. And this system doesn't run out when it's set up and it gets going at birth. It is a perfect nutritional setup. And God put it there to work and to continue working as long as it's kept running, basically. As long as milk is being taken out, milk's going to be replacing it. And it can go on for years. If you plan to bottle feed, you need to give some serious thought to the what ifs, because these what ifs have happened in very real life, not far from here. And during COVID, all over the place, formula shelves were empty. Right now in East Tennessee and West North Carolina, the shelves are empty. Lots of people are making donations, but some of those moms can't get to the donations. You've got to consider what an exceedingly helpless feeling it would be to have no way to feed your baby. You know, older kids, you can give anything in a bad situation, but not a baby. You are very limited. But when you breastfeed, you have food ready all the time at the perfect temperature with no preparation. You don't have to cook it. You don't have to keep it refrigerated. You don't have to mix it with clean water. It's just there ready to go. And if you want to skip the other 2 points from this podcast about your health and your pregnancy, that's on you. Hope things work out well. But this is the one that you really need to dig deep inside and prepare to do, because this is the one that someone else is relying on you. This one is easy when you have prepared and have the right support. Now, I know some of you are going, no, it's not. It's not easy. It can be a little hard to figure out the first time. I get that. But you can definitely do it. And if you have prepared ahead with something like my course, you'll be ready to go when the baby comes. There are people who specialize in helping with this too. And so if the conditions aren't catastrophic like they are right now, you can seek out these people and they'll help you get going. But even if you can't find those people, even if you're in a catastrophic situation, having taken a course like mine will help you be ready to get breastfeeding going when the baby comes. Your baby is relying on you. And I do not want you to ever face moments like some of these moms are facing who can't get to formula because they chose to bottle feed for whatever the reason and their breast milk supply is gone. I'm not judging you. I'm just being real. God designed us to nourish our bodies. And God has designed us to nourish our babies. And the world has convinced most of us that the system that he put in our bodies to nourish our babies doesn't work. But the world is not of God. He made the world, but what is happening in this world is not from him. The world is lying to you. I need you to hear me when I tell you to trust God. Trust his design. It does work. If it didn't, humanity wouldn't be here anymore, because breast milk has sustained babies across history until about the last century, when formula came on the scene and some companies stood to make a whole lot of money if they could convince you to use what they had and not what you have built in. Lies are what convinced women to ever even consider that stuff. But I'm not going to get into all that. That's past the scope of this episode. I will get to preaching, and we don't need that right now. So let me take a minute to help you. I want you to take my course. I want you to be prepared. And I know what I have put into that course for you is going to get you there. So that if you find yourself in a destitute situation like some of these women have found themselves, you will be ready. It is the most complete course you're going to find because it covers mind, body, and spirit. Not in some new age weird way, but in a way that honors our Creator, the Lord, who has perfectly designed this system to work. And I help you to understand how that system works. And in learning that, you learn to love God even more because you see how much he put into making your body work the way it should. It brings you nearer to God while also learning how the whole process works. So you can learn to trust the way it works, and you can learn to work with it. So that if you end up going faster than you planned, laboring faster and baby comes faster, or you can't get your epidural you thought you wanted, or if you get caught in traffic, or the anesthesiologist is gone, or your entire town washes away and you have no way out, you are ready. You know how to labor, you know how to give birth, and you know how to nourish your baby, even if you can't find formula. And yes, we also go deep into nutrition, so that hits that first point also, for both when you're pregnant and when you're not. Y'all, this is vital. These are truly survival skills, and you can't afford at this point, knowing what we know about what's going on in our country right now, you can't afford not to take this. Especially now, while you know you got internet and you know you got power. So because of that, to try to urge you even more to get yourself prepared, for the month of October, I'm extending a special discount because this is so very urgent, and it is killing me that I can't get this information to these mamas who need it right now. I wish that there was a way. I wish I knew where they were. I wish there was a way to get the internet to where they could watch it and be ready. I can't reach them, but I can reach you. Go to go.yourbirthgodsway.com/CEC. Or if that's too hard, just go to go.yourbirthgodsway.com and then scroll down to where you find the online Christian childbirth education course. At the very bottom, when you go to check out, there's a little box that says summary. It's got a little down arrow. When you click that arrow, that's where your promo code box is going to come up. I want you to put in promo code Helene, Helene. That's the name of that hurricane that caused all this problem. Put in Helene, and it's going to take 10% off the course to make it more affordable. But I'm telling you, this course has, I don't even know, 20, 30, 100 times more value than what I charge. My course is one of the lesser expensive ones out there with more content from a truly experienced perspective, because I've been there for over 20 years on all aspects, all sides of it. I've had all of my babies naturally. I've nursed all of my babies, one of them for 4 years, the other two for 1.5 years and 2.5 years. And I've helped women have babies in the hospital and out of the hospital. I've seen all sides of it, and I know how to prepare you, and that's what that course will do. It will prepare you, and not to mention, you also get access to the monthly live question and answer session. So if there's things that come up in the course and you're like, I don't really understand that, I need to talk to her, you have an opportunity every single month to talk to me. Y'all, get prepared. Take the course. You can't afford not to. Go.yourbirthgodsway.com/CEC, promo code Helene, get you 10% off. If you have questions, email me. Links are all down in the description as usual. I'm sorry that these 2 weeks have been a little heavy, But guys, life is a little bit heavy right now. And I want you all to be prepared. I do not want you scared and hopeless. I want you prepared and ready. See you next week. Real quick, if today's episode blessed you in any way, would you head over to Apple Podcasts and leave me a quick 5-star written review? It'll take you less than a minute, but it's the best thank you can give me. And it will help my show to reach more mamas just like you, so we can all find God's best for our families. I'll see you right back here in a few days.